Hi, welcome to Liberty Park Music. I'm Michelle Huang, your piano instructor. In our lesson today, we'll be looking in depth the technical and musical aspects of a piece by the Austrian composer Franz Schubert. In this piece, we will also have a chance to review some of the musical concepts that we have learned in the previous lessons. Ecossaise is a popular dance in France and England in the late 18th and 19th century. It was danced in a quick 2/4 time. Spend a few minutes now and observe the rhythms, notes and fingerings, repetition of patterns, articulations, and dynamics. Don't worry about the tempo yet. We will start slow and gradually speed to allegretto once we learn the other musical details. Write out the counting, circle repeated phrasings, and draw arrows to indicate up and down movements for the articulations. Let's first take a look at the rhythms, since it's probably the single most important thing to learn when first approaching a new piece. Looking at the piece throughout, the smallest unit of rhythms is an eighth note, so we will count 1 and 2 and throughout the piece. Let's count and tap the rhythms of the piece now. Nice and slow, hands together. 1 and 2 and 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 1 and 2 and. Next, we'll take a look at notes and fingerings. First, we need to determine the key of the piece. 1 sharp, first note and last note are G's. It's clear that we're in G major. Let's look at the left hand first and see what these chords are. First chord is without a doubt a 1 chord. The second chord a 4/6/4. Back to 1. Then a dominant 7th chord in its root position without the 5th. Which is a little different from the 1, 4/6/4, 1, 5/6/5, 1 chord progression that we have learned before, where instead of going from 1 to 5/6/5, now the 5/7 is in its root position, so we go from 1 to 5/7. Here the hand does need to move down. What comes after the 5/7 now is not a 1 chord in its root position, but a 1/6/4 chord. Keep the D on the bottom. Simply move the top 2 notes down. Then 2 5/7 chords to follow. Then 1. Let's play the left hand chord progression again. Now take a look at measures 9 through 12. This is the B section. Notice the left hand chords are in treble clef. Measure 10 has a minor 6 chord spelled E, G, B. Measure 12 is a dominant chord. Measure 13 to the end is the exact repetition of measures 5 through 8. Notice the right hand follows the pattern of 2 measures of quarter note followed by 2 eighth notes. Then quarter note staccatos, ending on a half note. Line 2 begins with a fragment of an ascending D major scale, starting on C sharp. Followed by D octaves, ending on G. Measure 9 continues moving down to B octaves, keeping the bottom B but move the top notes down. Same pattern repeats in measures 11 and 12, but a whole step down. The last line repeats the second line. Let's play the right hand again, paying attention to the interval in between the notes. We will also add in the countings. 1 and 2 and 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 1 and 2 and. Next, we'll take a closer look at the movements associated with various articulations in the piece, and also review the techniques involved in playing scales and octaves. Marked in the score, you'll notice that accented notes and long notes, in this case the quarter notes, are marked with down arrows. Staccatos and the last note of each phrase are marked with up arrows. Accented notes are marked with larger down arrows because they need a little bit more force to play them. Take the first note, for example. Drop your arm into the key faster and with a little bit more force to emphasize the note. For the long notes without accent marks, for example, the quarter note in measure 8, sink gently and slower into the key with wrist. The sound produced here should be warm, not as forceful and powerful as the accented notes. Staccatos are played with a straight up motion, bouncing lightly from the wrist. The last note of each phrase is played with an up motion with a gentle release to the next phrase. Notice that we need to pick up hand and wrist with a gentle release at the end of every phrase. For example, going from the end of the scale in measure 6 to the first note in measure 7. Let's take a look at line 2, which consists entirely of scale and octaves. Measures 5 through 6 are essentially an ascending D major scale beginning on C sharp. quickly review the technique for playing an ascending scale. Tucking the thumb behind 2, and again behind 3. Remember to transfer the weight from 2 to 1, and from 3 to 1. Be mindful not to twist your wrist or elbow, keeping your arm aligned to your wrist and hand. The octave passage in measure 7 involves a rocking motion back and forth between the high and low notes. Strictly speaking, we're rotating our wrists as we play the octaves. The movement is similar to opening a jar of pickles or twisting a doorknob to open a door. This motion also applied to measures 9 through 12 as well. Now let's play the right hand once, paying attention to the upward and downward motion associated with different articulations, the thumb tucking technique for the scale, and the wrist rotation for the octaves. Remember dropping to the key fast and precise to create an accent sound for the first note on the right hand. At the end of each phrase, release gently into the next note. Release the hand in between the chords on the left hand. Let's play from the top, hands together, adding in the dynamics as we go. Keep the first line loud and strong, which is marked forte. In measure 5, begins a little less in the first line, with the mezzo forte, then gradually getting louder with the crescendo to the octaves. The key word here is gradually, paying close attention that each note is a bit louder than the previous note in the D major scale passage. The high D here should be the loudest note of the line, about a forte, but be careful not to accent it. Land on it with a warm sound. Then the crescendo, again gradually, one note softer than the previous one. Let's play this section A again. Section B has more wrist rotation for the octaves. 6th and 4th. Again, remember to pick up the left hand in between the chords. The first note on the right hand is marked FZ, which stands for forzando. This indicates to play the note forcefully. The term forzando, unlike a regular accent mark, has a surprise element to it. In this case, the first high B is played with a slight force, so drop quickly into the key. Then the rest of the measures 9 through 10 is simply forte. Measures 11 and 12 have the same articulations and dynamics. Let's play section B together. The second part of section A is repeated. This time we start even softer with a mezzo piano, also crescendo to the high D. This crescendo will be a little smaller than the one in measures 5 through 8 because it starts only with the mezzo piano, which means it will probably only crescendo to about a mezzo forte. Let's play section A' together. Let's play Schubert's Ecossaise from top to bottom. Once you have practiced this piece a few times, you can quicken the tempo a bit to make it more lighthearted and dance-like. In this lesson, we focus on the technical and musical aspects of Schubert's Ecossaise. We approach this new piece by first learning the rhythms, then the notes and fingerings, the repetition of patterns, the articulations, and lastly, adding in the dynamics. For your homework, continue to practice various aspects and concepts we have talked about in lesson today. See you in your next lesson.